But they may, right? They may.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now they have a deal in hand.
Andy Gresh, Pat Ford, they've met. Have at it. No. You support the deal.
Look, now that they've come back and they've tweaked it a little bit to where the state of Pawtucket, the city of Pawtucket is going to have more skin in the game, why do you think the governor jumped on it? Because she can look at it and justify and say, we've had an existing deal in place. This is, in a way, refreshing it. And if you look at what is going on around the International League and what has gone on in AAA baseball the last, 7 years or so, the numbers are very clear. The municipalities are involved in some instances, in 2 instances in the International League. 2 of the teams are owned by nonprofits, where one paid off their stadium about 7 or 8 years early, and the other one is on track in Columbus to pay theirs off 7 years down the road. I think the setup works. Attendance has gone up in all those places where stadiums have been built. So in a way, there's already a deal in place. I just kind of look at it as this is a reboot, and I think the governor is sort of on board. That scares me.
Well, the governor's on board. I don't want to get into nuances of this. I mean, in general, Andy's data with the leagues and the comparable industry stuff is really the emphasis here. The governor was phony in her opposition to this thing 30 days ago. She was reading tea leaves that were, I think, created by opposition voices like Pat, versus really worrying about whether Pawtucket's bond was covered. And then they went ahead and changed that language, and she had no other excuses. Having said that, she did drive this conversation with the Commerce Department very slowly and carefully, worried about voices like yours who say you're going to raise holy hell over this. Why is this such a problem?
It's a problem because, once again, Rhode Island taxpayers are being held hostage to a political project that exists for a number of levels of political expedience. We've got a governor who's in a death-like embrace with the construction unions, who's hell-bent to salvage a failed administration. We've got Don Grebian, who I believe, by the way, whose heart is in the right place. I believe his motivations are good because he wants see a city grow. But ultimately, when you get past the straw dog argument she had last time, which was that Rhode Island taxpayers shouldn't be the backstop, that Pawtucket City taxpayers would be the backstop. Well, ultimately, if this fails, and the nation is littered with failures of sports stadiums, if this fails, then the city of Pawtucket is going to look to Rhode Island to bail them out effectively. We've seen it happen before. In 38 studios, there was actually an insurance policy that we chose to ignore. It's a bad idea. Government has no place involving itself in free markets whatsoever. If the project stands on its own legs economically, great.
Well,
let's move forward.
So look, I mean, that's a philosophical argument that I can respect. The fiscal analysis, I hate to throw money around as small bits of money. The $15 million bond that Pawtucket has got to finance in this thing is a cherry pick against their municipal budget. So I mean, come on, man. I mean,
well, then why is there a threat of a fire department closing that's being rumored in the city of Pawtucket? Why are the city of Pawtucket schools in such terrible physical condition? Great people work there; they're working very hard, but under difficult circumstances. So if this kind of money isn't a big deal,
we finance schools on a state level.
Right.
That's the habit in this in the state of Rhode Island. That's
so
the structure.
why is the city of Pawtucket suffering on so many levels, and yet seemingly we have no problem whatsoever involving government in a private enterprise? The individuals and investors involved in this are well-heeled. They've got the sophistication, they've got the lifelong access to serious capital markets that if the project stood on its own, if it was economically viable, there's plenty of, as they say in Wall Street, dry tinder on the side looking to invest in guarantees like that.
Okay, so that establishes the arguments. And when we come back, more.
The state is not on the hook for any obligation of the city. At the end of the day, I don't think this is going to cost the taxpayers of Rhode Island anything. That's
Governor Raimondo the last couple of days talking about the deal. And what she's saying is the cash flow that's already generated from the old formula at McCoy Stadium is enough to be able to finance the $23 million bond that the state establishes as kind of the B tier of bonding in this whole thing. And then the city of Pawtucket is on its own to make sure that there are more residual revenues from the stadium and development revenues that will pay for its bond. Having said that, Pat's no on this. Gresh and I are supportive of the concept, but at least you were quick to get to some ideological, philosophical arguments here. And I guess where I'm going to leave you two guys to talk about it amongst yourselves is this. I keep posing the question to the listeners, and that is, for those of you who don't like this thing and say not a dime of taxpayer money, guess what? And you know this, make a decision. You're in baseball or you're out of baseball, because guess what? The industry standards are such that these deals are shared. So he'll explain that to you again, but that's the put. It's blank or get off the pot, and you may be very clear, but most people say, oh, I want to put taxpayer money in this thing. Guess what? Aren't ready to say, well, we don't want baseball. That's the truth. The truth is that there's going to be a shared expense because it's that way everywhere.
Right, but I'll point out a guest on your show last night, Mr. Brandt, who's a noted sports blogger, sports business blogger, has pointed out in the past that, let's just say, he sees the beginning of the end of these type of deals. Also understand that we have no real grasp of the underlying economics surrounding this stadium, what its makeup really is, what its audience really is, what the true economic impact is, and what the true economic impact of this new proposed development will be. You can't build a koi pond in this state without the DEM showing up, ready to rumble with you. Yet we're ready to commit, again, tens of millions of taxpayers' money, as well as the rather battered psyche of this state, on another private-public partnership experiment that has no guarantee of success.
All right, first of all, there's an existing deal in place that was renewed in 2014.
Right.
Where people screaming then, oh my God, it's broken, where was everyone? No one spoke up then, and the state was backed into a corner because they knew when Ben Mondor passed away, there were ultimately going to be new owners. So unlike 38 Studios and other stuff, we have at least bare minimum a flow chart. Number two, what Andrew Brandt was also referring to was the city of Las Vegas and the state of Nevada giving $750 million to the Oakland Raiders to move as a part of a stadium where, by the way, they are chipping in the other half of the $1.5 billion. They went out and found a way to borrow it, and the NFL kicked in.
And I would argue to you that on a relative scale, the type of money that we're looking to spend here, with no guarantee of return, is relative to that scale in Nevada. And let's also point out something very simple. In the past 10 years, and I read the lease this week in preparation for this show. In preparation for this show, ultimately, consumers have woken up to the, I'll call it the perpetuation and the perpetration of the myth that somehow publicly subsidized sports is either A, good for the community psyche, and B, actually makes economic sense, when neither is fundamentally true.
Well, then tell me why the Charlotte Stadium that was built in 2015 has attendance that went up from, let's see, in 2014, when the stadium opened, it went up to 9,686 people attending. The year before, it was 3,900, and that's being generous. They were #1 in the International League in 2015, #1 in 2016, and they're right now #1 in 2017. It cost $54 million.
Right.
The city chipped in money. There was a group that threw in $750,000. There was a massive donation of public land, and they are on track to pay off their ballpark earlier than normal because they actually were smart and brought in another tenant. You know, you mentioned the whole DEM part of it. They ran into that in Nashville, and do you know what that city got stuck with? An extra $10 million on their bill. The PawSox have wiped that out because they know that would be a sticking point.
Two very simple
reasons. All relative.
No, but two very simple reasons. Number one, you're looking at, and you can bring up a couple of North Carolina examples. You're looking at.
No, I can bring up Columbus and Gwinnett, and I can bring
actually,
up
Gwinnett's failing. But boomtown economies are fundamentally different, all right, than the type of economy we're talking about in Pawtucket.
So Allentown, Pennsylvania and Pawtucket are vastly different compared to Oakland and Las Vegas?
What you're talking about
Charlotte, Columbus, Lehigh Valley, and El Paso.
Where are these people going to come from? This great.
They're already here, and that's part of the reason why.
And they're going to populate the hotels, and they're going to all this ancillary income that's going to be developed.
This ain't Hartford, okay?
Right.
The idiots in Hartford got sold on something like that. I don't think anyone is looking at it and
all
saying
the
that it's about
ancillary development
hotels.
that's being touted.
It's about everything in the stadium.
All right. And again, the stadium is a self-contained economic environment which has no interest whatsoever and will work very hard, like a casino, like a mall, like just about any private-public partnership has chosen to be in this state to work very hard at keeping people in the stadium to spend money on them. What this project depends a lot on is the notion that there's going to be this halo effect in the city of Pawtucket. When in fact, if you're arguing to me that people are going to come here from out of town, all right, for a weekend in a crowded economy where the Boston Red Sox are a mere 40 miles away, prove to me those numbers or show me numbers from an independent third-party source that wasn't, by the way, the same firm responsible for the Ryan Center.
I'm not sure that this destination argument that you're trying to diffuse is
where's
legitimate.
the money come from?
I don't think there's a destination argument here. This is a current marketplace behavioral enhancement.
Right.
You know, that the train station is coming in and there's some, you know, Slater Mill development that they're looking at.
Right.
Is more of a Boston commuter, entertainment commuter type of thing. Whatever hotel action happens in the city of Pawtucket, it can or cannot happen with or without the stadium. The stadium is, nobody's trying to
the mayor of Pawtucket
people
is
are coming from Burlington, Vermont to go see a PawSox game.
So then if you're talking about the current crowds, where is this income going to come from to justify this development?
Well, there's a couple of ways. Number one, when you actually get a ballpark that isn't a dump and you have the ability to partner with Rhode Island companies to be able to bring in them for concessions and maybe give them a little bit of rub from being in there.
There's already concessions in this stadium, Andy.
Whoa, but wait a minute.
By the way,
but they don't have the ability.
And they sell a lot of burgers.
Right, but they don't have the ability right now because they don't have the space to partner up with someone in the state of Rhode Island who would love to get.
Because you've got the state of Rhode Island.
I haven't even finished it, so I don't know how you can say it's a principal flaw.
Right, no, the principal flaw here is that
if we have a principal flaw to be debated, we have to do that in the next segment.
Okay.
Stay with us.
I truly believe, clearly I represent the residents who elected me in Pawtucket, and I care about my community, born and raised here, right? But I think it also is a referendum on the Blackstone Valley, because, the Blackstone Valley is, collectively, the mayor of Central Falls, Mayor Murray of Cumberland, Mayor Lombardi of North Province have all been involved in supporting me in this issue because we all understand that it's more than that. And collectively, we're a lot larger than the capital city. But individually, we're not the capital city. So this is also a reflection on the Blackstone Valley.
All right, so that's the mayor's overall economic perspective. The principal flaw was...
Well, the principal flaw is this. We're talking about income accretive to the stadium that somehow is going to act in isolation with competition from outside sources. Perfect example, an upscale restaurant being put into the stadium. That's typical of the model, and that's actually a good supporting reason to build a stadium like this, on their own dime, by the way. That restaurant doesn't act in isolation. There is a limited amount of disposable income in any one given economy. That's simply fundamental economics. So if you build a restaurant here in a facility that's subsidized by the state, they can act with an artificial advantage over other restaurants in the area. Someone goes to dinner there, they don't go to dinner here. And we're just shuffling the deck. This is another case of Rhode Island 52 card pickup. We did it with the mall. We pulled income out from another part of the state to the mall. We keep moving the deck, and somehow we think that's growing an economy. It's never worked.
First of all, that restaurant that they're going to partner with is open all the time that people can have access to. While there will be more events whenever you build a current
in competition
building,
with other Rhode Island businesses.
Whenever you build a stadium that is actually functional to where there's going to be a club area, you're going to redo your concessions deal to where you're going to end up making a little money there. You end up in a situation to where you're coming up with a ballpark. Look, the people in Hartford, economically, that thing was a whole disaster. But what they had to do in 2016 was cancel some 75 club events because the ballpark wasn't ready. That is revenue and income that the PawSox can't generate right now, because the ballpark isn't up to snuff and isn't up to standard.
And that's revenue they're taking away from Rhode Island businesses. There
not
isn't some
necessarily.
magic. Yes, there isn't some magic.
No, Pat,
where are the projections?
Hold on, Dan. Who's dropping $12 million in cash in Pawtucket? That's what the PawSox are laying out, and then they're going. Tell me.
And how much of that money just comes from other businesses
Pat,
in
you're
Providence?
you're the one saying here that it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Where's your data on what company is willing to come into Pawtucket and bare minimum drop the amount that the PawSox are going to lay out, let alone look to be able to borrow?
It's a one-time shot at the expense of businesses around this state.
No, it isn't.
Absolutely. There's no demonstrable proof. And if there is, from an independent third-party
I don't know.
company...
I mean, I think Charlotte and Columbus have actually
so
proven
Charlotte
to do
and
very
Columbus
well.
economies are just like Rhode Island. They bear no relationship to that whatever.
We all
We're talking about baseball. We're not talking
we're
about
talking
the
about
overall
underlying
economy.
economic
May I
dollars.
just ask this question? Are you denying that we already have a baseball economy here? That we're already cash flowing a few $1 million into the state budget from the proceeds of McCoy Stadium, some of which will be there to pay this bond? This is an existing business.
And I'd be happy to counter that.
You got a minute.
Okay, so I'll counter that very simply. We don't know what the breakdown of that money is and how much of that money will simply stay in the state at other venues as opposed to Pawtucket Red Sox Stadium. We don't even know what the makeup of the average crowd is. The notion that somehow the Pawtucket Red Sox leave the state and baseball leaves the state is completely false. I've spoken to, folks who represent a variety of the college leagues that operate around. They're happy to come in and actually pay rent to Pawtucket and provide the same type of economy. We don't know how many people are going to Red Sox games because they're Red Sox fans.
When URI or PC is trying to put a put into, or Brown or whoever else are trying to put, that would be. And by the way, more the merrier, because this facility, at least on a goal of year-round, ought to have more partners, right?
There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different things that they can do, but the colleges ain't going to save anything. This is about professional baseball, and the data shows that the attendance goes up in the markets in the Pacific and the International League.
Fundamental different economic markets that have no relationship to Rhode Island.
How do you prove that?
You're fighting this to the end? Is that what you're going to do?
Oh, absolutely. We can't prove it because the state's done no research whatsoever. They're basically going out there, and listen, we've got 3 months to either make history or be history on this. And I'll throw down the gauntlet, and I'm challenging the state to come out and actually come up with real numbers.
We will have more time to discuss this. The hearings will be in the fall. Last word when we come back. For those of you who say no to the stadium, it's a fundamental question. Are you ready to say no to baseball? Because the industry has shared equity, private, public partnerships, and it ain't 38. All right, North Korea tomorrow night. See ya.